Today, I want to talk about why you should have a neutral third party talk to your best clients. And the best way I could do that is through a story. I was working with a client and we were setting up to do a case study with one of their clients. This client was a custom software company. They wanted to do a case study, and I said, can I ask some other questions along the way to see how that might inform our marketing strategy? They're like, sure, go ahead. And we get an interview with their client, and the head of marketing is also sitting in on this call. And to be clear, this is a person, I like them a lot. They're a very competent marketer. We work great together. And she decides to come along for the call just to fill in any gaps because she's the one who actually brought in the business. She's the one who met them at a trade show and reeled them in. So we're talking, I'm getting all the details about how they met, what problem they solve. And I ask this question of their client and I say, hey, if you had not met them at a trade show, how would you go about finding a custom software company? What would you do? And their client said, we would probably keep doing what we were already doing, which is going online and doing a search, doing a Google search. I said, that's interesting. So you were doing this already. What were you searching? What were you actually typing into Google? And so their client told me, oh, we were looking for truck transportation billing software, a few other things, right? And I said, did that work for you? And I said, no, all the things that we had found were too cookie cutter for us. I'm like, so what would you have Googled next? Something like truck transportation billing alternatives? Yeah, probably. I'm writing all these down because these are great keywords to focus on. So fast forward to about a week later, and I'm speaking with the head of marketing of this company. And again, we have a great working relationship. I go, hey, how was that interview? Was that good? And she says, yeah, I think that was good for you. And my ears perk up because it's really interesting that she qualified it that way. And I go, yes, it was good for me. What do you mean? She said, I brought this client on already. I already knew their story, and so this was nothing new to me. I said, okay, but what about when I asked about what they were searching and the phrases they actually used? I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, that was good. I'm like, do you realize that they gave us the keywords they were using? We need to take and make a page. This should be our SEO strategy. We need to take these keywords and make a page saying truck transportation billing software alternatives. Hit those keywords and try to get other clients who are searching for the same thing into your orbit. She goes, yes, that's actually great. That's a great idea. And so what happened here? Obviously, she learned something new in this conversation once I had pointed it out, that the client was actually giving us the keywords that they're using for their search that could have landed the business if they had not been at that particular trade show at that particular time. Here's the problem though, when you're too close to a client and the process where you brought them on, it could be a problem because what happens is you've already got a pattern in your mind that you're fitting to that client. And so when new information comes in, if that doesn't necessarily fit the pattern in your head, we tend to ignore it, right? And like I said, this person is very competent, but in that interview, they went in with the attitude, I know this stuff already. And so they weren't receptive to the new information when it's sitting right there in front of them, right? And that isn't to call out this one person. That happens to all of us. We're all guilty of doing that. Matter of fact, if we didn't do that somewhat, our brains would just be overloaded with irrelevant information all the time. That's why our brains do this. But it can mean that sometimes an important insight is sitting right there in front of us and we don't see it because we've just filtered it out. Someone who is a neutral third party and doesn't have all those patterns already can come in and see that information for what it is. So I encourage you, if you are struggling with your marketing and your business development, if you aren't getting the clients that you need, you should have conversations with your best clients, but have a neutral third party sit in, or better yet, hire them to actually run those conversations, because you might be actually surprised at what you find.